Here we go. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Judy Younger. I am a librarian at Brookdale Community College, and it is my pleasure to introduce Kevin Burkitt in this presentation called 91 Days and Countless Nights. This presentation is part of a grant that the library was awarded um, concerning resilience and climate change, which we just got awarded that grant recently. So we're very excited about it. So right now I know Kevin and I used to actually be in the same building. I could see him all the time, but I'm going to actually give my official introduction to him. I do have a photo print that I really treasured that he actually gave me. So I'm very excited about that. But let me give you my official introduction to Kevin. Kevin is an award-winning landscape cityscape photographer who specializes in long exposure and time-delayed photography. His works have been shown at Princeton University, Morris Arts, the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, both the Monmouth Museum and Brookdale's CVA Gallery. Kevin is also a contributing artist at the Main Street Gallery in Manasquan, New Jersey. 91 Days, Countless Nights is Kevin's take on destruction and recovery. This 2-year project explores the devastation from Superstorm Sandy while examining how long it took for some form of recovery. Kevin's current work explores early mornings at the beach and shoreline, capturing the essence of morning one sunrise at a time. And with that wonderful introduction, take it away, Kevin.
Thanks, Judy. Hi, everyone. How are you? Waving at you. What's going on? I see some familiar faces, some people I haven't seen before, some people I haven't seen in a while since the start of the pandemic, like Steve with his crazy Amish beard he's got going on there. Very good. So what I want to do today is just kind of have a brief discussion or a talk about some of the photographs that I took. Okay. So the project is called 91 Days, Countless Nights, and it's kind of a weird title for a project that was so seemingly just so long. And basically, the way that it worked out was I was in this space where I had this like really strange concept about destruction and about devastation and about being sad, about being lonely, and in some respects being depressed that the surrounding areas that I grew up in were just so damaged in the course of a 3-day period, between the storm surges and the wind and everything else that happened. So it took me about, the storm happened on October 28th. About the 30th, we were clear of what was going on. People kind of understood what was actually happening. And by the 31st, people were kind of in shock of what actually did happen. Excuse me. So I had this idea or this concept of this narrative in my head, if you will, that was, are we getting better emotionally? Are we getting better through wellness, just through personal wellness? And I think some people were recovering slowly from the damage that was done, as some people lost everything and some people lost nothing, like myself. What I found was that I had this idea about going out and shooting these now destroyed houses or these vacant lots or these places that were damaged by the storm in the evening. So I would go out and I would take random photos initially. So the project was completely random. There was no set goal to it. I didn't spend 1 week in Manasquan and head north to Belmar. Like, it was just randomly wherever I would go at the end of the day, wherever I felt like going. So some days I would go to Union Beach, and some days I would go down to Sandy Hook area. And then some nights I would go to, into Belmar or Avon or Seagirt or Spring Lake and Manasquan. I spent a lot of time in Manasquan. That's where I really remember growing up as a kid, was living in Wall Township and neighboring Manasquan. I spent a lot of my time down at the beach in those areas. So that was kind of the focal point of what this project became. I also spent some time in Ocean County. I went down to Point Pleasant and Bayhead and Manalocan and Seaside Heights in those areas. But that wasn't until maybe 6 or 8 months after the storm was actually happening. So there was this sort of random approach to what was going on, okay? And then what I was shooting on was a Nikon D3S. It was a really great low light, full frame mirrored camera. And I chose that camera before I started this project, knowing that I wanted the best low light camera I could buy at the time. And I spent a lot of money on it. It was only 12.1 or 12.3 megapixels, so the resolution wasn't that high. But I think it has a very timely look now that I look back on these photos 8 years later about these pictures. So what I'm finding is that, as I grow with this project, or as it grows farther and farther from when I actually took the photographs, I'm finding that the quality of the images are still holding up because of the process that I use to capture the images. Every night there was a soundtrack. There was silence. There's a couple different bands I would listen to, like Radiohead and Tool were primarily the ones that I would kind of spend most of my times around. There were 3 songs off the Lateralis album by Tool that kind of drove the presentation. The first song is called Lateralis, is the name of the album. The second track was called Disposition, and the third was called Reflection. And all 3 of those tracks going forward, when played in a sequence, told a story based off math concepts, based about random things and math concepts. So I would find that when I would be out shooting, I would be out creating these pictures at night. I needed something to bring me into that space, that headspace ahead of time. And the albums that I chose were things are like what I call thinking albums. They were the music they were the music that makes me kind of think creatively. So OK Computer by Radiohead is one of my favorite albums. And then obviously Lateralis is one of my favorite albums, and Kid A by Radiohead as well. So for the better part of a 2.5-year period, I was listening, shooting, editing, listening, shooting, and editing to basically one whole album in OK Computer, 3 songs by Tool, and then the middle part of Kid A, which is more of an escapism sort of thing. So it might not make a lot of sense, and I guess it's hard to describe what the music actually does for me, but these are the kind of albums that create hyper focus in my life. Like whenever I want to get really psyched up to do something, or when I really want to experience something interesting, I find that I always rely on those 3 albums for everything. So the shooting process was those 3 songs, and I'll get to the why they were that in a second. When I was driving around from scene to scene, it was a whole different album, and then when I would get there, there'd be like a couple songs off of a different album that I would listen to as well. So there wasn't a lot of silence in my brain when I was shooting these tracks. But when I would get to the location, when I would see something, when I would get out of my car and frame something and see it, I would pause, and I would get out of the car and just listen for, to me, an eternity is a minute. But to have that silence for like a minute to kind of gauge what the room or what the view or what the ambience was doing kind of sucked me in as well. So the silence came early in the evening. It was when I was driving around, when it was still light out, or just after dark, and I was looking for places to go take pictures. I would use the silence to my advantage to kind of frame myself for what I want to get out of that evening. And when I framed myself in such a manner, at that point, I would then turn on the music and enter this sense of just transcendence, if you will, about creating what I wanted to create. And that was really interesting. Rules versus sequence. What do you mean by rules versus sequence? As you're going to see when I share the Lightroom catalog with everyone in a few minutes, every picture is pretty much dead center, which is a bullseye shot. That's not really the best compositional tool to use when you're storytelling. Normally, you're going to use what's called the rule of thirds, where you have a grid that's divided into 9 equal sections, and you place your object in bottom left, bottom right, top left, or something. But what I chose was to use the bullseye method, because I literally couldn't see what I was shooting. I had no frame of reference. So I would go out with a little headlamp, and I'd be marking my area with the headlamp to what I thought was the frame, and keeping that in my mind when I was composing the pictures. I was setting focus with a flashlight. So I would put the flashlight on the object, grab focus with the lens, and then turn off the autofocus so that it was focused on that piece in the distance, and then come back and recompose my photograph. At that point, I would either put the meter up on the camera or I would leave the meter down, and I would program the timer to run for about 7 to 10 minutes. That goes back to that sequence that I talked about, that time value, which is really important for this project. So every picture was taken between 10 p.m. and 2 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't taken at 5 o'clock at night, or actually there's 3 that are taken in early evening. But the majority of the work was taken in the overnights between 10 and 2 in the morning, if not later. And essentially that process, when you're out in the dark for that long of a time, you have no semblance of depth. You have no semblance of what you're getting. So playing with the pictures is kind of unique, because you get a whole different experience from what you capture, and you have to have some sort of vision, or at least I had to have some sort of vision for what I captured, what I made when I created the black and white photos. So we get rules for a sequence. There were no back-to-back shots. There were no, I shot a house here and then moved 20 feet over and shot a house to the left or shot a house to the right. The only rule that I had for the evening when I would go out was to compose no more than 3 shots, but no less than 1 shot, and then try to get as much that I could. And there were evenings where I would be shooting these things and I just would get nothing in return. So here's the value of time. And if you add the hours, minutes, seconds, and the frames, I guess, shot and drop frame, which is a geeky thing of TV land, this is about the average time it would take to run one picture in production land. So what that means is I would go into my albums, I would go into my iPhone. I still had a wired cable at the time, so I still had a headset that had a wire on it. I was on an iPhone 4, and I would pull up lateralis, disposition, and reflection by tool, and the runtime of those three songs is about 28 minutes or 25 minutes, in that general range. So I would literally time the entire scene based off of the first segment of the show, of the picture, because when I was taking the picture, that was my creative mind speaking. That was my my capture time. That was me just examining what I could capture, and then I would come back and I would let the camera render out for another 7 minutes, and then I would look at that picture and I would contemplate if I was going to keep that photo or not for like another 3 to 4 minutes in that scene. So I didn't rush anything. I didn't take my time, but I didn't rush. Like, I didn't want to get in there and leave. I knew that I was going for something. And also, to kind of keep the project unique and honest, I didn't revisit the same scene in an evening more than once. Like, I didn't look at it from one angle, come back, shoot it from another angle. I shot everything dead on. There's one place in Manasquan that I shot 5 times. And that was just because I fell in love with that corner. I don't know why. It was just one of these things where I liked the layout of the way the composition looked in the beginning. And then they tore it down, so I shot that again, and without the space and everything else going forward. Okay. So we talk about this idea of time. We talk about this idea of value. That's a lot of time for a photograph. 25 minutes is an eternity for photography. So, I had to really be using all of my knowledge, all of my skill, and hoping beyond hope at some points that I would get something good, because you're going to stand in the cold, or you're going to stand in the rain, or you're going to stand in the bugs or with the bugs for a half hour. You have to be committed to that photograph. And that's what this was. It was commitment to the photograph. And then there's a sequence of events. It's a random sequence. It follows the golden rule. It's called the Fibonacci sequence. It's all based off of math and patterns. So the music that I was listening to was loosely based off the same sequence and theories and dispositions and things like that. So what I found was I was looking for patterns when I was shooting things, but I was also looking for breakup. So like I chose this photo to kind of illustrate my point. You know, you have almost two of everything. You have a reflection of something. You have the houses in the background. You have the swirls in the water. But the sequence, basically, it goes from 1 to 2, and then it goes 2 plus 1 is 3, and 3 plus 2 is 5, and just builds upon itself. And it's sort of kind of random is what it ultimately comes down to. But the idea is not truly random, because good photography, when you're looking at good pictures, usually shows things in 3s, 5s, 7s, 9s, or 11s. It doesn't show things in pairs. It doesn't show things in quads. So like the image that you see behind me, the image that you're seeing right behind me, right? I shot that picture not acknowledging the rule of thirds, but the storyline was the way that the breakup happened between on the doors. And if you see the way the doors work, the left door is higher than the middle door is higher than the right door. So that was breaking up that rule of thirds going forward inadvertently. So ultimately what it comes down to is the creative process, the thinking process, the being able to manipulate the things the way that I wanted to was very interesting and very, very usual for me. Okay. I mean, some of the stuff that I saw, especially down in Monmouth County, in Ocean County, I mean, it was bigger. It wasn't as compact. It wasn't as, it just felt grand in a very terrible sort of sense. And the idea was, you see these big beach homes when you're going into Manalocan, or you see these big beach homes when you're going into Bay Head or those coastal areas. It was vast. I mean, I got these big vistas shooting with a 20mm lens that was just super wide and super big. And you look down into it, you realize how chaotic it was. And then you're standing there and you're saying to yourself, wow, this is really surreal. This is really interesting. This is really just, this is why I'm here, And there's times where I was taking these photographs and I was enamored by the scene. So this goes back to that one that I was telling you earlier. There used to be a home here. And when they tore this down the following winter time, I believe this was in January or February, the snow just covered that area in such a pattern that just made me want to go back and shoot it again. So I would go back there to shoot this going forward. Okay. So then I have some stories. The project itself was interesting because it was so much work. It was just so big and so vast. And I use vast a lot because, when you're committing yourself to shooting for 30 minutes at a time, and you know that you're going to get maybe 3 shots a night, and the average photographer is going to keep 10% of what they shoot. I was shooting at about a 4-to-1 ratio, meaning for every 1 shot that I kept, I had done a setup, I had shot something for 20 minutes, I had utilized my time and only kept 1 of them. So the evenings were long. And before I even got into my evening, I spent time riding around trying to find out where I was going to be going. So I would say on average, an evening's worth of shooting probably took between 6 to 7 hours of my time just to go out to produce something. And then if I got an image that was capable of being produced, then I had to worry about the post-production later. So it's not just roll up, take your camera out of the bag, and then just shoot the picture as you see it. This was more of a, okay, go to the location, wait for the lighting to be right, wait for the lights to go completely dark. And in some towns, there were no lights, like in Manilokin and Bayhead, in Union Beach, there just were no lights on these lots. They were completely dark. So I was relying on the aperture, and the aperture is this thing inside of a lens, right? The aperture is this thing inside of a lens that opens up and closes down, right? So I would be shooting with a medium-sized aperture, like right in the middle of the lens to get the depth of field that I wanted, or I would be shooting with a very narrow aperture to increase the time value that I wanted to get the dramatic look of the stars moving or the light streaking or the clouds flowing over and doing those sort of things. So artistically, I had some play with what I was creating going forward, knowing that I wanted to create something unique and interesting. Okay. So I'm going to tell some stories now about some certain shots that I took. This is probably the strongest composition of the entire presentation. This was shot. I'll pull up the metadata when we go into Lightroom so I can show you exactly when it was shot with my camera settings. But this was shot like my wife's uncle had just passed away unexpectedly, and her and her mom were in his house in Ocean Grove, and there was just nothing I could do. Just nothing I could do. I couldn't say the right thing. I couldn't do the right thing. I couldn't be the right person I needed to be. And I had my gear with me. So I drove my car up to the edge of Ocean Grove and Asbury. And I just said, I'll be back in an hour. You know, you guys do what you got to do. You need to kind of take care of yourselves right now. And I just sat there in the dark and got close to this structure that was or still is the old steam building in Asbury Park. And I took this composition, and it looked eerily strange when I took it. It was like all orange and pink and stuff. But when I paid close attention to the detail in the structure of the brick and the way the lights moved and the structure in the sand, I knew that I could work with this photograph. What I didn't know was this was going to be the piece that was going to make this project stand out from all my others. There's two photographs in this project. There's this photograph and there's this photograph that really speak to the strength of the project. Everything else doesn't really speak the volumes to me that they do to other people. Those two photos, so this photo and the garage photo, really tell the story of why I did this. And then this is on Manasquan Beach. Again, with the metadata, we'll try to pull that up later. This is a space where I just remember being cold, but I don't remember being that cold because I fell asleep here. You know, I was taking the photograph. I was real low. I was below like a little sand dune or something that was cut out from what was being repaired by the storm, and I had my camera down really, really low. And normally what I would do is, 20 minutes is a long time when it's 10 degrees outside and you can't really keep yourself completely warm. So I would allow myself to fall asleep to an alarm. So I would time my shot through the shot and then through the rendering phase. So if it was a 7-minute photo, I would have 14 minutes. So I would take my phone, and I would set my phone to 15 minutes, and I would just sit quietly if I wasn't listening to music, or I would just kind of lay down on the ground sometimes and pay attention to what was going on in the world around me. Well, for some reason, I didn't set my alarm this evening. And when I was taking this photograph, I actually ended up falling asleep until way early the next morning, to like almost 7:30 in the morning. And my wife called me. She's like, "Where are you?" I'm like, I don't know. She's like, "Well, you're not home." And I think I'm in Manasquan. She said, "Well, you should come home because you have to go to work in an hour." So I drove home and then looked at the photograph that evening and realized that I had something special with that photograph. This photograph was taken in Union Beach. This picture was the only house where I can identify the lot and block number on. So it's block number 69, lot number 3. This is the only house in the collection that I have an address for, or that I can have an address for. Everything else remained anonymous. I didn't take any location notes. I didn't take any styling notes. I didn't take anything other than that. Like, I mean, I think I know where some of these pictures are taken from, but this is the only house that I actually have a lot and block number that I could pull from if I wanted to going forward. This was the scariest of the evenings. I was shooting this shot and this shot were shot in the same series. They were parallel to each other. One was behind the other. This was on the beachfront, and then this was on the other end. This is in Lock Harbor. You know where that little lake is, Wesley Lake in Asbury Park, where you can kind of go around up to that beach club, and then you can go over into Asbury. Well, this is right on the corner of Lock Harbor and Asbury by that by the waterway. So the water would be right behind me. And then if you were looking at this house, this structure would be over the right-hand shoulder on the beachfront itself. That's where this one was. So when I was taking photographs of this house, you know, it was, I believe it was cold, but I'm not sure how cold it was. My wife was with me at the time because I just had her go with me for some random reason that night. And I saw this moving on the inside of the walls. And I was like, okay. And then I looked down and I had like 2 minutes left on my capture time. And generally the rule is once you capture, you don't move your camera until your render is over, because you'll never produce the same shot again. So I took my camera. The picture was over. I let the shutter close. I put the camera on the tripod and I walked the 200 feet back to the car carrying the tripod. And I look over and there were these guys. I don't know who they were. Didn't ask any questions. They looked at me. I looked at them, and he's walking to the distance carrying what seemed to be like these big pipes. So I don't know if it was copper or not, but I did read in the newspaper that people were stealing copper out of the Sandy home. So that's how the name Stealing Copper came about for that photograph. This is another location. I made a mistake. You can locate this photo on East Avenue in Mathis. This is the gentle reminder from the Bayhead Police Department that I can't be on public property when taking photos of the abandoned houses. They were nice about it, but they were also very stern about it. They were like, yeah, you could be in the street, but you can't be on the sidewalk. I'm like, okay. So I guess you have nothing else to do. And it was one of those things where they knew I was coming, because like when I was going to be in a town for a while, like I would make arrangements with the police ahead of time. I would go to the police station. I would say to them, you know, I'm going to be in your town. You know, this is what I'm going to be wearing. This is what I'm going to be doing. I would have my iPad with me with some photos on it. I would show them what I'm doing. And most of the time they wouldn't care, but they did say, if people call us, we have to come out. And if you are on private property, we're going to either ask you to kindly leave, or we're going to ask you not so kindly to leave. So most of the police were pretty nice about being in that position. They were nice that it was nice of me to let them know that I was coming. But more importantly, it was nice of them to let me do what I wanted to do. And I always told them I would be out between 10 and 2. And sometimes I was out till 3. And then they would drive by and they would wave. And then they would drive by with their high beams on and screw up my shot. And I would get all pissy about it. And I would be like, okay, so that was just a half hour I just wasted. Or they would drive by with their lights on, and it would create an unusual cast of color in the photograph that would work to my benefit. So it wasn't so horrible either way. It just, I guess, depended on the evening and what you wanted to get out of it going forward. This is just a good sky picture. I remember this day as the skies being really, really low all day long, and there was a good drag to the sky. So I went and found some homes in Manasquan near the beach that were being lifted or being partially lifted. And when they lifted them, this house just made a really good picture for what I was trying to accomplish. The skies were just kind of flying through. And it was a very proud moment. It felt like, you know, we're making progress. This little house is getting lifted off the ground. You know, it's going to be a nice home again. People are investing in staying in the area. They're not going to leave the area because of the storm. So I just call this one Promising Skies because it was just a very proud moment when I was doing this. I felt very comfortable with the picture that I was taking, and it felt very unique to me. So the project, I shot 138 nights on this project. You know, I shot for a long time on this project. And then this project has 115 different images. And those images are all recorded and archived. So those images were all they were all edited in, they were composed and edited in an application called Adobe Lightroom for the most part. So basically what the software allows you to do is the software allows you to pull up metadata about data. So remember how I said we're going to show you this picture here? So what we can do here is we can pull up the information about this photo. We can pull up the information about this photograph. So we know that it's called Losing Bet at the Casino. I shot this on January 29th, 2013 at 11:57 p.m. Gives you the resolution, not that you need to know that information. This was shot for 301 seconds, so I'm not good with math. So I guess it's like close to 3 minutes, right? 301 divided by 60. Like 5 minutes is what it was shot at. And then it tells you what aperture and what lens I used as well. So it gives you the aperture setting, which was f11, which was right in the middle of the lens. The ISO setting was 100, so there wasn't much room to play with the ISO noise. And then the 20 millimeter lens was the size of the aperture that I was using. Was the size of the lens that I was using. Trying to find the other one I wanted to show you about. So this one was shot much later. This was shot on in April 17th of 2013 at 9:38 a.m. So around 10 o'clock is when I went out. It was still cold out. It was still chilly. This was shot for a little bit longer. This was shot for 481 seconds. So that's about 7 minutes long. This is shot at a 20 millimeter lens as well at ISO 100. So as you can see that I have all of these pictures in my catalog. I have all these pictures for me to go through, right? And you're probably saying, well, how did they look initially? Well, the beauty of being able to do this online today is that I can show you things I wouldn't normally show people if this was a face-to-face show or if this was a live printed event where I have to produce images. So here's two images. Here's the raw image from the casino shot. And remember I told you how it had these colors, these pinks and these blues and these magentas to it. And then here's the raw image that I shot of the garage. So the images started out in color. And when the images started out in color, they were created to be very unique going forward. So I think there's one that's really, I like this one. I think this is one of the best edits that I did. I think this is just one of the best edits that I did to make it look kind of more haunting than it was. I mean, this is a haunting picture, even in color, but when you edit this in black and white, you create sort of a different feel. All right, so essentially what that means is when you're working on photographs, like when I was bringing this program to life for us today, I went through the catalog and realized that I have several that I just didn't want to work on or didn't think about working on or forgot how to work on. So my process for editing is really pretty straightforward, right? So here's the photograph that I start with, right? So the first thing I do is I make a digital copy of that photograph. That way I'm not losing anything going forward. And I know that I want the pictures to be a really good black and white picture. So what I'll do is I'll come into my presets. I think I don't have presets on here because my preset library got erased last night. It's on a different machine, so I hope that I can pull that back through. So anyway, so what I would do is I would come in, I would adjust the exposure levels, I would adjust the contrast, adjust some highlights. I would work all these sliders in here like this, adjusting texture, adjusting clarity. I come back and adjust the white balance. So I have some control over the photograph before I do any editing. So I'm trying to make it look a little bit more crispy, trying to make it look a little bit more haunting. And I would come back down and do all that work. And then I would go into black and white. And in black and white, I would do the same thing. I would kind of come in, play with things a little bit, mess around with the texture. But all of this was done as what's called a preset. So I would just import the preset onto my picture. And when I imported the preset onto the picture, all of this work would be done for me, and I didn't have to do a lot of editing to it. The editing process didn't really take too long. It was the cleanup that took the longest amount of time. So I would adjust the reds. I would kill the blues to kind of give it that black background that I like. And then I would increase all of the magenta, the purple, and the blues I would immediately get rid of to kind of give this hard background that I like to work with. And I would come back up to the presets again and kind of play with things. Okay, so that would be my process for the basic editing that I would do. And then I would go to another application called Silver FX Pro 2. And in Silver FX Pro 2, I had even more control over the black and white process. That was the actual darkroom that I was using for things. So I've done all that work. I've gone into, I've done Silver FX Pro 2. I come back, we'll pretend that this is that image here. And then what I would do is I would go and I would clean it up. So if there was stuff in the sky that I didn't want, I would come back in and painstakingly remove individual items throughout the course of the picture. And there'd be hundreds of these, like little control dots that I was removing things. And you can see that I'm augmenting the reality of the picture to be based off of what I want it to be. Okay? So that was really my process going forward. That was really what took me so long to do this. It wasn't the actual editing. It was the actual cleanup process that took so long. So the project length was 2 years, 1 month, and 4 days. It wasn't planned. It literally just stopped one day when I realized I didn't want to do it anymore. There was too much recovery at that point, and I really wanted to shoot the destruction and not try to tell the story of recovery. I'll show you my first and last shots in a second. The project was just what you see. This does not count all of the stuff that I didn't keep or that I didn't work on that didn't work out or that got deleted or lost. About 53.4 camera hours was shot in camera just when my shutter was exposed. And there's a rough estimate of about 375 hours worth of editing across the 315 pictures. That's a lot of time. Okay. So the actual So the actual program itself, I'm a little lost here on the screen. I apologize. The actual program itself, if you're going to look at when it started, the first photograph that I successfully edited started on January 13th, 2013. So I probably took this around the 11th of 2013. And the last photograph that I recorded was this photograph here. And that was on 2/17/15. So it's about 2 years, a month, and 2 days apart, or 4 days apart. Okay. All right. Do we have any questions? You can just unmute yourselves if you want to, if you have a question.
Or you can put it in the chat.
Hey, Kevin, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Did you ever have ideas for what you wanted the shot to look like before you went out there? Because I know you said that you kind of went out there with like the complete freedom, you know, so.
Yeah. So what I was hoping for, because I was doing such long exposure, was I was looking for atmosphere moving, some drama in the skies. I was looking for some star streaking. I was looking for a whole bunch of just lights, like starred out. The whole idea behind this was just drama. That's what I was trying to go for, whether it was the aesthetic drama of the image of this building that was being damaged or broken, or whether it was the skies behind that. And most of that was pulled out during the editing process. And that was really part of what the scope was just being able to see these things. You know, like if we look back at some of the photographs, right? If you look back at some of the color images, you just, to kind of answer your question, when you look at some of these color images, it's so clear because I'm shooting in the coldest part of the year. But like this photograph here, this was taken in August, so there's some atmosphere in the sky here. But in other pictures, it's just so cold because I'm taking the photographs in the coldest part of the year, like this photograph here. This was taken in March of 2013. It was really cold outside. So you're not getting those clouds, or if you are getting those clouds, you're not getting much atmosphere. So when I would take the photographs, I would have this vision of what I wanted them to be like, but I wanted the story to kind of be told by the entire photograph. I didn't want to add things. That's why I didn't do any work in Photoshop. That's why I didn't do any layering or compositions or compositing. I just wanted the photographs to be a unique experience from 7 minutes at a time or 10 minutes at a time going forward.
Okay. All right. So you might have had like the idea of, I want a dramatic shot, but you don't know exactly how you're going to make that dramatic shot happen.
No, I think there were 2 times where I knew I was going to get that one. I'll show you those 2. So,
and just to reiterate, Kevin, you were doing this in the dark.
Yes.
With a headlamp.
Yes.
and a light on your phone. That's all you had.
That's all I had. I had a flashlight.
Oh yeah, flashlight. I remember that. Yeah. That's amazing.
Like this shot here, I knew I was going to get some drama from the skies because there was atmosphere in the evening because it was a summer month. But when you're dealing with the colder stuff, when you're dealing with like the brutal cold, like this is, and I see my mother-in-law in the audience today, like this is 10:30 at night at Phillips Avenue Beach Club, where she's a member of. You know, there was nothing in the sky. It was dead clear. And because I shot this for almost 14 minutes long with an aperture of f11, it looks like it's broad daylight. And this dancing that you're seeing here is because the wind was kissing the dirt or kissing the sand and blowing it around. So that texture was already in the picture that I was taking. So when I was examining the photographs, when I was creating the images, when I wanted to actually get to the picture that I wanted to show, I was doing it. Like this is a little bit of forced perspective. This is a little bit of a different shot for me. This is another one that's like, I think like 12 minutes long, or a 12-minute long photograph. But they're all pretty much the same aperture. They're all pretty much f11, 20 millimeters, ISO 100. And then I just wanted to kind of have this look down the boardwalk at those other things going forward. And in this photograph, you can see, do you see all the crud in here? Can you guys see that? All that stuff.
Mhm.
So this is the kind of stuff where I would come in and I would literally just spend hours just cleaning all of that. Instead of letting it look unique to the photograph, I would spend almost an obsessive amount of time. I would go through and try to clean all those things up, because I wanted the pictures to look as clean as possible, even though the destruction was really, really dirty. Anyone else have any other questions?
So you're saying, this is Judy Younger. You're saying that it took years, 2 years at least before my question is, how long was it before you started seeing recovery happening?
I noticed the recovery period was starting to happen about the 1.5 year mark. It depended on the pockets of areas that I was going. Although this project lasted 2 years and 3 months or something, 2 years, a month and a couple of days, I was only shooting on this project for like 3 or 4 months at a time. I would go out from October until January, and then I would stay inside unless it was really clear or unless there was something really good happening in February and March. I made a point to be done with the project before Labor Day. Before Memorial Day, I should say. So I didn't shoot at all between Memorial Day and Labor Day, unless it was just something that totally spoke to me. At that point, it would only be like a one-off shot. It wouldn't be working as hard as it was before. So I guess you can say, like, I would work for 3 months, take a month off, work for 3 months, take a month off. And then the following year, would work for 2 months, take 2 months off, work for 2 months, take 2 months off. And the following year, it was just kind of getting through. And at that point, I had more pictures than I knew what to deal with. And I didn't want this to become bigger than it was, because it was already huge. It was already huge. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else have any comments or questions for Kevin?
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I was.
just so you guys know, before I forget, if you open up the chat window, I put the PowerPoint presentation in the chat window for you to download. And then also there's a picture there you guys can have as well for a screensaver.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead, whoever that was. Sorry.
I just wanted to say, I know for myself, it was very emotionally overwhelming, and because I was stuck at home. My husband's an electrician, so he was out helping people with the recovery efforts, and my kids were small, so I was stuck home, and we didn't have cable TV. We did have a generator, so I'm not complaining. Our needs were taken care of, but I felt very cut off. Because I wasn't getting any news, so I didn't see what's going on. And you were there, seeing it firsthand. How did it affect you emotionally?
I'm a very disconnected person in general. That's just kind of me by nature. So I was able to separate myself from the project, from the reality. Like when I went into project mode, I was in project mode. It hasn't been until the 5-year anniversary and until now that I look back on this and realize, hey, this is actually important stuff. This is actually, this is probably historical, the way that I did this project, and hopefully it has value. I think emotionally for me, it saddens me that we went through this, but seeing how strong we recovered from the storm over the last 8 years, I think we're beyond that recovery point. I think it would be more bothersome to me if we still lived in Ocean County, in Brick or Toms River along the water, and had a house that wasn't that was still being neglected because we couldn't get Sandy funds or we couldn't do what we needed to do. I just think our geographical location, being in central to southern Monmouth County or even northern Monmouth County, I think we're at an advantage of the other areas that were hit by the superstorm because we were able to recover faster than other places.
Kevin, it's Deneen. Fantastic presentation.
Thank you, Deneen.
What advice do you give your students if they have an idea to do, to pursue a project that, similar to this, because it did take, a lot of time and effort and emotional toll as well in some respects. What advice do you give, people who want to, document history and things like this?
I think you have to trust your gear. You don't have to have the best gear. And from a hardware perspective, you have to have the gear that you have. Like you could have done this with a cell phone during the day. Like before Manasquan was hit with the superstorm, someone took a picture of every single house in the beachfront and stitched it together to make one giant panoramic. That's incredible. That kind of stuff is ingenious because it's a history piece. As far as a project like this goes, I would say to students, don't wait for a start and don't look for an end. If you have an inkling of something you want to do, if you have to do things, by all means, what I would say, just go out and go ahead and do that kind of stuff. And I just see Paul just posted that people were still affected by Hurricane Sandy, and I'm sure that they are. It just, unfortunately, in some respects, I think we move from tragedy to the next tragedy to the next tragedy, if that makes any sense. Like we've kind of, not that we've forgotten about people, but life just has a way of moving on. And I just happen to have all of these photographs that captures the worst moments in people's lives in a way that's creatively acceptable. Does that make sense? I guess, and to further answer your point, Deneen, I would say, if you have a student that has a passion, whether it's audio, video, film, writing, whatever it may be, taking the first step is always the hardest. Getting out there and doing something, because what I anticipated from the first picture, from what I got out of the first picture, was completely different. And when I began to edit the photographs and realized I can create something out of them, then it became a process, then it became an obsession, and then I had to let it go. So every project starts as being something that's super important, but then at some point I just had to let it go completely and walk away from it. Like every project has an end.
Any projects that you're working on right now that you could share with?
I've been doing the sunrise and sunset project for about 2.5 years now. I'm running out of places to take pictures, so I'm debating whether or not I should end that project, but that's just easy because I enjoy doing it. I get to go out early in the morning. I get to see people. I get to be out in nature. I enjoy doing that, but I don't do that with the fever or the fervor that I had when I was doing it 2 years ago. I'm not going out every morning anymore. I'm going out on selective mornings. That's another big project that has, this project has 115 photographs in the collection. That project has 375 that are completed. So that's 375 either sunrises or sunsets that I've seen over the course of 3 years. So,
Kevin, can you put your website in the chat if people
don't
want
have
to
a
explore?
website.
Oh, what was it that you sent me?
I just sent you a link to.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a good question, Judy, and it's a good point. The reason why I don't promote this on a website or promote this as being anything more than it is because people are very sensitive to their homes being shown being destructive. And I don't want to capitalize in a monetistic way from this project, from someone's house being blown up or being brought down or whatever it was from Sandy. I want to just kind of have this project, do talks about this project, just kind of be with this project and not really do anything with it. Like if it takes legs and someone wants a copy of a photograph, I'll give them a copy of a photograph. If someone wants to know more about it, we'll talk more about it, but I'm not going to pursue this as a book. I'm not going to pursue this as anything other than what it is, only because I don't have the rights to it. I don't know the people who own the property. And also too, I think it's just rehashing old feelings that are emotionally trying for people. And it could be troublesome for people if they have emotional baggage. And I don't want to do that to people.
Right. Paul mentioned that the black and white certainly increases the impact.
Yeah, it makes it feel more hollow, more real, more surreal. Yeah, and that's really the power of the editing software that I chose. And again, this whole process, when I say the editing software, I just used a template. I modified the template to create a preset. So I would do all that work that I showed you in Lightroom, go from Lightroom to Silver Effects Pro 2, drop my images in Silver Effects Pro 2, drop a preset onto that, do some minor adjustments and changes, and then come back to Lightroom and do all the cleaning. So the editing wasn't the detail work. That probably took an hour and a half to 2 hours per photograph to do. Once I got the presets done, it was probably like 45 minutes. It was all of the detail stuff. It was all getting all the dust off the image sensor, off the lens. You know, because when you have your camera open for that long of a time or that much of a time, you are going to have stuff that land on the lens. You're going to have stuff that does just kind of make things look sloppy. And I wanted to clean the photographs up and make them look really, really good. So
I have one follow-up question for you.
yes.
Because you were doing such long exposures, did you have any surprises after you developed the photos? You know,
Yeah.
things that you didn't realize till later on?
Yeah. Car streaks are interesting, especially at the end of the exposure. Like you go like 7.5 minutes without seeing a car, and then that car shows up the last 10 seconds. You get this like light streak going through the street. It's super annoying. But that's part of it. That's part of the acceptance. And this goes back to what I'm going to kind of get to need a third answer here is just you have to accept what you can't control in any project that you're working on. Yeah, like if I could control the streets and the lights and all the stuff going with it, it would be ideal, but I can't. So there's stuff in my pictures where people are kind of walking through or people would come up to me and say, "What are you taking a photograph of?" I'm like, "Time." Or "What, are you going to see me?" I'm like, "No." Yeah, it's just, I think I got some really cool photographs that are super blown out. Like one night I wasn't paying attention and I opened up my aperture to 2.8 and I shot it at like f/16. So I had a 30-second long exposure, but what happened was I'd never bagged the tripod, and I have this great picture of these two sand machines that I can never get again. It's slightly blurry and out of focus. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I'll show it to you. Yeah, it's a shame because I wasn't paying attention. It was very cold out this night, and I wanted to take this. But if you look at this photograph, this was shot on March 3rd, 2013, and it's a great picture. The stars are perfect, but this is one of my shorter exposures. This was shot for 30 seconds, ISO 2.8, ISO 1000, which I never do, f/2.8, which I never do. So I was working the wide part of the lens, but if you look at this, it's out of focus. Yeah, so I'm never going to use that photograph now, and I can't use that photograph because it doesn't meet the project requirements. You know,
It's still a great shot, though.
it is, but it's soft, and it annoys me that I didn't do it the right way. I didn't do it the way that I always do the photographs. I saw it. I was tired. I wanted to go home. I was like, let me just do this half-baked kind of job on this one. And I took a photograph, and I got home and was like, oh man, it stinks.
Yeah, but when you see it from a distance, it looks almost perfect.
Yeah, it's just one of these ones where it's going to be a postcard size.
Well,
Hey, would you mind resending the link, because I didn't receive it in the chat?
In the chat, there's a PowerPoint presentation and a link to a picture. If you go into the chat to the top of the chat.
It's not
Yeah, I
showing
don't
up for
have
us,
that.
Kevin.
Not
It's not
coming
on
up
our
for you?
chat.
Okay, let me put it in there again.
I think if you came in late, you may have not received that for the chat, possibly. I don't have it either.
yeah, Ryan says it's not there for us who joined.
Okay, everyone, hold on a second.
Okay.
Coming
There you
in.
go.
That's one.
You don't need your tools. You sure?
You see that?
Yeah. Duplicity.
No, I still don't have it. I see somebody said got it, but I didn't get anything.
If you can,
I can Dropbox it to you. So let me do this. Let me give you my information.
that's a good idea.
So if you guys want copies of anything, here's my information. You can just email me. Just say that you came to the Sandy show at Brookdale and you want a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. I'll send it to you via a OneDrive through Brookdale. And then I'll also include 1 or 2 pictures for you as well that you can use for part of your screensaver pack. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that good, everybody?
Thank you, Kevin. This was absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. As I said, this session is being recorded. Please look forward to, oh, look, she got her screenshot already. Yay, Denise!
That's Kevin's calendar from last year.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's so beautiful.
I want the Moon Patrol shot.
Yeah. So here's
Kevin, that will be your big seller, the one that you like the least. Everybody loves.
I know. Isn't that funny? So just to keep you guys posted, as part of this grant that the library was awarded, we will be having more programming in the spring. The next one coming up is in February with a gentleman from Monmouth University that's going to be talking about rising sea levels and the impact that that's having and will continue to have on our community. So please look forward to that. We're going to be doing PR pieces for these events. We're going to be having a film screening in the spring about the climate change. So I'll be sending more PR information out about that. I'd love to have you take a survey. I'm going to put my email address. I haven't created the survey yet, but I will. And this is my email address. So if you will email me if you're interested in taking the survey, because that will help me with my reporting that I have to do at the end of my grant. So if you're interested in participating, just shoot me an email or let me know what you thought about the presentation. Okay. Thank you so much for being with us today at Brookdale Community College. We have some great people working here. And if you know any students that want to come to Brookdale or are thinking about their college career, please let them come to Brookdale because we'd love to have them here. We have great faculty, staff, everybody. So see you guys.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. This is a great platform for you to present this material. Give everybody an insight into your technique, which you couldn't do at the CVA gallery. So
yes, that's what I think too.
We can continue to do these. I think the show is only popular from September till November.
Yes, and this is the 8th anniversary coming up. And ironically, we're going to be having a storm on Thursday that is related to a hurricane. And half of the East Coast is going to have rain. The other half's going to have a foot of snow. So very kind of similar conditions, actually. So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much. And I appreciate you coming to this presentation. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay,
So good
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Kevin.
Bye-bye. See you, Mary Jo.
Okay.
Thanks, Kev.
Thanks, Howard. Thanks, Diane.
You're welcome. It was very enjoyable.
I appreciate you coming. Thank you so much. Hey, Sally. You're muted, Sally.
You made us download Zoom.
You're muted, Sally. Unmute yourself. There you go.
I gotta go down to this.
You're muted again.
Now?
There you go.
Oh, well, no, thank you. It was wonderful. And I love your touching message about Uncle Jim. So
Oh, no
thank you.
problem. Yeah, I appreciate it. Bye-bye. All right. I'll see you guys later.
Bye.